Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am beyond thrilled today. We have a true master of mystery and the macabre joining us. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
I am Edgar Allan Poe, a poet, a critic, and a weaver of tales that perhaps lean toward the shadowy side of the human heart. Most know me for a certain persistent raven and a few telltale hearts.
A legend. Now, let's take it back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on January 19th, 1809, in the city of Boston, Massachusetts.
And what was your given name at birth?
Simply Edgar Poe.
Is there a story behind that birth name?
My parents, David and Elizabeth, were actors. It is widely believed I was named Edgar after a character in William Shakespeare's King Lear, a play they were performing around the time of my arrival.
That is so fitting for a man of letters. What was your hometown like growing up?
Well, Boston was just the start. After my mother passed away when I was very young, I was taken in by John and Frances Allen in Richmond, Virginia. Richmond felt like home. It was a place of Southern tradition, bustling commerce, and beautiful landscapes along the James River.
What was your family life like with the Allens?
It was complicated. Frances, my foster mother, was a beacon of affection and kindness. She doted on me. John Allen, however, was a stern merchant. We often clashed over my future and my debts. He provided for my education, but there was always a distance between us that never quite closed.
I can imagine that tension. What kind of kid were you back then?
I was quite the athlete, actually. People often think of me as a brooding youth, but I was a strong swimmer and a fast runner. I once swam 6 miles against the current of the James River just to prove I could. I was also very studious and, of course, always had a book or a pen in hand.
6 miles? That's impressive. What were your biggest fears growing up?
Beyond the typical childhood shadows, I feared the loss of those I loved. Having lost my biological parents so early, the idea of being truly alone in the world was a recurring specter in my mind.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
I always felt the pull of the poet. I wanted to be like Lord Byron, to capture the world in verse and find fame through the beauty and rhythm of language.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I adored languages, specifically French and Latin. I also loved drawing. I used to cover the walls of my room with charcoal sketches of whatever my imagination conjured up.
What was your first job?
My first real foray into the working world was as a clerk in John Allen's counting room. I must confess, I was terrible at it. Figures and ledgers were a prison for a mind that wanted to wander.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
It was likely during my time at the University of Virginia. While others were focused on their social standing or their wealth, I found myself utterly consumed by the need to create. I saw the world with a certain intensity that others seemed to lack.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
Joining the army under the name Edgar A. Perry. I was broke and desperate. It seemed like a temporary fix, but it led me to West Point and eventually solidified my resolve that the military life was not for me. Poetry was my only true path.
What was your biggest break?
Winning a contest held by the Baltimore Saturday Visitor in 1833. My story, MS, Found in a Bottle, won the top prize. It gave me the validation I desperately needed and opened the door to editorial work.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Poverty was a constant shadow. There were times I didn't have enough money for wood to heat my home, or even for paper to write on. I lived on the very edge of subsistence for much of my life.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. The imp of the perverse wouldn't let me. Writing was not just a career, it was my very breath. To quit would have been to cease existing.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
I was a meticulous editor. I would write on long scrolls of paper, pasting them together as I went. I believed in the unity of effect. that a story or poem should be read in one sitting to maintain its emotional grip.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
Perhaps a teacher of languages or a simple journalist. But in truth, I cannot imagine a world where I wasn't trying to sell a story.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a whirlwind of movement, moving from Richmond to Baltimore to Philadelphia, always looking for the next opportunity, always hoping the next poem would be the one to change my fortune.
How did relationships change after success?
Success in the literary world often brought as many enemies as friends. As a critic, I was known as the Tomahawk Man because I was so brutal with my reviews. That didn't exactly make me popular at dinner parties.
Did fame bring happiness?
It brought a sense of accomplishment, certainly. When The Raven became a sensation, it was wonderful to be recognized, but happiness? That was always a fleeting guest in my house.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The scrutiny. People began to confuse me with the characters in my stories. They thought because I wrote about madness and gloom, I must be a madman myself.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
Many thought I was a drug-addled dreamer. While I had my battles, I was a professional, a hard-working editor, and a man who deeply valued logic and cryptography.
What was your darkest moment?
The long, agonizing illness and eventual loss of my dear wife, Virginia. She was my Annabelle Lee, and watching her fade away broke something inside me that never truly healed.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I regretted the bridges I burned with John Allan. Despite our differences, I wished we could have found a way to understand one another before he passed.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
That I only cared for the dark. I actually wrote many satirical and humorous pieces. I had a sharp wit and loved a good hoax.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
My time at the University of Virginia ended in disaster due to gambling debts I couldn't pay. I handled it by leaving everything behind and heading to Boston to publish my first book of poems. I always tried to turn a catastrophe into a new beginning.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
Fame changed my reputation, but fortune remained elusive. I was famous, but I was still poor.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
I fought a deep-seated melancholy and a struggle with alcohol that would come and go. It was a battle for stability in a very unstable world.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My mother, Elizabeth, whose memory I cherished, and Frances Allen, who gave me the only real maternal warmth I ever knew.
What was life like in your final years?
They were quite active. I was traveling, giving lectures on poetry, and even found hope for a new marriage. I was trying to raise funds to start my own magazine, The Stylist.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was refining my theories on the universe in my work Eureka, and, as always, writing and lecturing. I never stopped planning for the future.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on October 7, 1849, in Baltimore, Maryland.
What happened?
It remains a mystery to this day, Calvin. I was found in a state of distress outside a polling place, wearing clothes that weren't mine. I spent my final days in the hospital, unable to explain how I got there.
It's the ultimate Poe mystery. What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I was obsessed with cats. I had a tortoiseshell cat named Katerina who would often sit on my shoulder while I wrote.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
That I was a habitual opium eater. This was largely a fabrication by my literary rival Rufus Griswold, who wrote a scathing obituary to ruin my reputation.
What was your most unique habit?
I loved puzzles and ciphers. I used to challenge the readers of the magazines I edited to send me secret codes, and I would solve almost all of them.
What was your favorite food?
I had a simple palate. I quite enjoyed a good cup of coffee and some bread and molasses when times were lean.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
Not a restaurant per se, but I spent much time at the Indian Queen Hotel in Baltimore, or various taverns where writers and thinkers gathered.
What was your favorite book?
I was a great admirer of the works of Coleridge and Shelley. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner was a particular favorite.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Oh, many, but none so bitter as with Rufus Griswold and several other members of the literati in New York. I wasn't afraid to tell someone their poetry was rubbish.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
Once, I published a story about a balloon crossing the Atlantic in 3 days. People actually believed it. It was a total hoax, but for a few days, I had the whole of New York City convinced it was true.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
Trying to drill as a cadet at West Point, I was so clearly out of my element that it must have looked like a comedy routine to the other soldiers.
Did you ever prank someone?
The balloon hoax was my greatest prank on the public. I loved the power of the written word to deceive and delight.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
When I had a bit of money in Philadelphia, I bought a beautiful piano for Virginia. It was a luxury we couldn't really afford, but seeing her play it was worth every penny.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Believe in your own vision, even if the world calls you mad. And remember, brevity is the soul of impact. Make every word count.
Edgar, this has been an absolute honor. Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
Only that it has been a delight to step out of the shadows for a moment. To everyone listening, find the poetry in the mundane and do not fear the dark, for that is where the stars shine brightest. Thank you for remembering me.
Thank you, Edgar. That was incredible. We just took a deep dive into the life of the man who invented the detective story and perfected the thriller. From the James River to the streets of Baltimore, Edgar Allan Poe's life was as complex as his prose. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.